The snowstorm howled across the white wasteland, turning the alien planet of Virelia into a sea of freezing death. Nothing could survive in such a night, not even hope. But beneath one thick snowdrift, 3 faint heartbeats still fought against the silence. Buried deep in the frost, 3 alien sisters lay together, their trembling hands clinging to each other for warmth. Their names were Lyra, Mira, and Tessa. Their skin glowed faintly blue under the ice, on a trait of their species, the Illyrians, and their eyes once shined like liquid silver. But now their light was fading fast. They had been left there, buried alive, come by their own people. Because they were born infertile. Among the Illyrians, fertility was sacred. Every female was expected to carry the future of the species. Those who couldn't were seen as useless, empty shells cursed by the gods. The elders called it the cold purge, when infants born without life-giving energy were abandoned under the snow so the planet could take them back. Lyra, the eldest, remembered the moment it happened. Her mother had cried but did not resist. Her father never looked at them. Only the priest's cold voice remained in her memory. The Baron must return to the frost from which they came. Now, years later, Lyra was barely 20. She and her 2 sisters had survived longer than anyone believed possible, hiding in frozen caves, scavenging scraps, and fighting hunger with sheer will. But tonight the blizzard had caught them again. Mira coughed weakly. "Sister, I can't feel my fingers." Lyra pressed her close. "Stay awake, Mira, don't sleep. The storm will pass," Tessa whimpered, barely conscious. "We should have stayed near the river." But Lyra shook her head. The river was frozen solid, and beneath its ice creatures hunted. There was no safety on Virelia, not for exiles. Their breath was slowing. Their hearts beat weakly. Soon, they would become statues of ice, forgotten like thousands before them. But somewhere in the sky, a light broke through the storm. A human transport craft, lost while scouting for mineral samples, was descending through the blizzard. The pilot, Commander Ethan Hayes, cursed under his breath as alarms screamed across the cockpit. "Systems failing. Visibility near 0. Come on, stay with me." The ship shuddered, dipping dangerously low. Through the swirling white, his sensors caught something strange. 3 faint heat signatures close together, unmoving. "Survivors? Out here?" Ethan muttered. "That's impossible." Still, instinct overrode logic. Humans had a rule drilled deep into their bones: never leave a life behind. He grabbed his thermal suit, forced open the hatch, and stepped into the storm. The cold slammed into him like knives, instantly freezing the air inside his helmet. He activated his wrist beacon, a faint orange glow piercing the darkness. The readings grew stronger. Then suddenly he saw them. 3 shapes under a drift, half buried, motionless. He dropped to his knees and started digging with his gloved hands, throwing snow aside frantically. Hey, don't you give up on me!" he shouted. The first face he uncovered was Lyra's, pale blue skin, silver lashes frozen with ice. She looked like carved crystal, fragile and unreal. Her lips were blue, her pulse barely there. "God," Ethan whispered. "They're still alive." He pulled out emergency heaters, wrapping them one by one in thermal blankets. Mira and Tessa were barely breathing. He knew he couldn't save all 3 out here. The storm was too strong. But he refused to choose. He carried them, one by one, through the blizzard back to the craft. Each trip felt longer than the last. His muscles screamed. The snow blinded him. At one point, he fell face first into the drift, dizzy from the cold. But the thought of leaving them behind drove him back to his feet. Inside the ship, he laid them near the heater, wrapping them tighter in blankets. Their alien forms looked strange and beautiful under the orange glow, slender, delicate, with faint bioluminescent veins glowing faintly through the skin. He started the heater to maximum and injected mild stimulants through his medkit, not designed for aliens, but better than nothing. "Come on, don't die on me," he whispered, watching their chests for movement. Minutes passed. Then a faint gasp. Lyra's fingers twitched. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing that same liquid silver glow, weak but alive. "Who are you?" she whispered in a voice trembling like wind through glass. Ethan sighed with relief. "Name's Ethan Hayes. You're safe now." "Safe?" Lyra coughed. "No one is safe from the frost." "Then it's a good thing," Ethan said with a small smile. "I'm not from around here." Mira stirred next, then Tessa. Their breathing steadied. but fear still clouded Lyra's eyes. "You should not have saved us," she said slowly. "If they find us, they'll kill you too." "Who's they?" Ethan asked. "Our people," Lyra whispered. "They believe we are cursed. The infertile must die or the planet will lose its blessings." Ethan frowned. "That's insane. You're living beings, not curses." Lyra's eyes softened for a moment, as if she'd never heard such words before. Then suddenly, alarms blared. Ethan's sensors flashed red. Incoming signatures. Multiple ships approaching. Lyra's eyes widened. "They've found us." Ethan turned to the control panel. "They're locking on. Military-grade crafts." He looked at the three sisters. They were still weak, barely able to stand. He clenched his jaw. "You save no one if you give up now," he muttered. "Hold on." The ship roared to life. Engines screamed against the snow. A beam of blue plasma shot past the window. A warning shot. "They're ordering us to land," Lyra whispered. "They'll take us back to the temple. They'll bury us again." Ethan's eyes hardened. "Not on my watch." He grabbed the controls, forcing the thrusters into full power. The ship blasted upward through the storm. Alarms screamed. Plasma bolts tore through the clouds, one grazing the side of the craft. Sparks flew. Mira screamed. "Stay down," Ethan shouted. "We're getting out of here." The storm swallowed them, flashes of blue and white everywhere, and until suddenly silence. The ship burst above the clouds into a vast starlit sky. The sisters stared in awe. They had never seen their world from above. The planet below looked peaceful, white and glowing, almost beautiful. Lyra whispered, "So small. It looks so small from here." Ethan smiled faintly. "Funny thing about cruelty. It always feels smaller when you rise above it." But their peace didn't last. The radar beeped again. "Damn it," Ethan muttered. "They're still chasing us." Two ships gaining fast. Lyra stood weakly beside him. "You should leave us. If you let them take us, they'll let you go." Ethan looked at her, eyes steady. "I don't make deals with people who bury children alive." Lyra stared at him, confused, touched, and afraid all at once. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know us." "Because I know what it means to be abandoned," he said quietly. "And because I can't just watch good people freeze to death." Her lips trembled, tears freezing on her cheeks. No one, not even their own kind, had ever called them good people. Outside, the chasing ships fired again. Ethan turned off the main thrusters and dropped the ship into a controlled freefall, confusing the enemy scanners. Then, at the last second, he ignited the engines sideways, launching them into the dark canyon below. The pursuing ships overshot, vanishing above the clouds. When the turbulence stopped, the sisters clung to each other, shaking, terrified, but alive. Ethan leaned back, breathing hard. "All right. Looks like we bought ourselves a few minutes." Lyra looked at him silent. Her eyes were full of questions, and something new, something she didn't understand yet. Hope. For the first time in their lives, someone had fought for them instead of against them. As the ship drifted through the shadow of the canyon, Ethan checked his map. "We need to find a place to hide till they give up the search," he said. Lyra nodded slowly, still watching him. "You're different, human. You don't know our world, yet you risked your life for us." Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess I just don't like seeing people treated like garbage." Outside, the snowstorm began to calm. The horizon glowed with faint light from the twin moons of Virelia. Inside the ship, warmth began to return, not just from the heaters, but from something deeper. For Lyra and her sisters, this was the first night they didn't feel cursed. They didn't yet know that the rescue was only the beginning, that Ethan's act of kindness would soon ignite a rebellion that could change their entire world. But for now, all they knew was that a human had found them in the snow and given them life again. The storm outside had calmed, but tension inside the human ship was only rising. The air smelled faintly of burned metal from the last plasma hit. Every light flickered and every sound of the engines felt like a whisper of danger still chasing them. Ethan Hayes sat in the pilot chair, his hands steady but eyes sharp, scanning the radar again and again. The alien sisters, Lyra, Mira, and Tessa, huddled quietly near the heater, still weak but slowly regaining color. The faint glow of their blue skin reflected off the metal walls like cold moonlight. "Status check," Ethan muttered, tapping his wrist display. Oxygen stable. Hull integrity at 68%. Power cells? Low, he sighed. We can't fly far like this. Lyra stood carefully, her long silver hair falling around her shoulders. You should have left us, she said softly. They will not stop until we are dead. Ethan turned toward her, his voice calm but firm. That's not how humans work. She tilted her head slightly. Then how do humans work? He gave a faint smile. We protect what we find worth saving, even when the rest of the universe says it's a waste. Lyra didn't know how to respond. She had grown up hearing that she was cursed, unworthy of life, but this human spoke like her existence mattered. It confused her and warmed her. Mira, the middle sister, weakly looked up. Are we so far from them? Ethan glanced at the screen. Not far enough. Their ships are faster. We need somewhere to hide until they stop searching. Tessa, the youngest, pulled the blanket tighter around her small frame. We can go to the ice caverns near the mountains, she whispered. They don't scan that deep, Ethan nodded. Show me on the map. Tessa pointed at a cluster of ridges on the holographic display. There, the Crystal Gorge. It's old and forbidden. He raised an eyebrow. Forbidden? Lyra explained. Our people believe the place is cursed. They say the spirits of the Baron live there, on those who froze before us, Ethan smirked. Then it's the perfect place. Superstitious people don't check their own ghosts. He adjusted the ship's course. The engines groaned but obeyed. Slowly, the ship descended toward the endless field of white peaks. For hours, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the engine and the distant wind pressing against the hull. Finally, as they approached the gorge, the view changed. A massive canyon of glimmering blue ice stretching miles deep. Sunlight from the twin moons hit the frozen walls, creating reflections like glass cathedrals. It was hauntingly beautiful. Ethan slowed the craft and landed near the base of the gorge. Steam rose as the landing gear touched the frozen ground. He stood up, pulling on his coat. Stay close. Keep quiet. Lyra and her sisters followed him out into the open. The air was biting cold but strangely calm. Echoes of wind moved through the canyon like whispers. Mira looked around nervously. They said souls scream here. Ethan smiled faintly. I've been in war zones that screamed louder. As they entered a deeper tunnel in the ice, faint blue light reflected off the walls. Ethan's helmet scanner beeped. Strange. Energy readings ahead. Artificial, not natural, Lyra frowned. That's impossible. No one builds here. They moved closer. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber, and there, frozen inside the ice, were machines. Huge, ancient machines buried beneath centuries of frost. Tall, spindly towers made of metal and crystal. Strange symbols glowed faintly on their surfaces. Ethan walked forward, brushing ice from one of the panels. These aren't alien carvings, he whispered. This is human tech. Old Earth design. Lyra's eyes widened. Humans here? Before you? He shook his head slowly. Maybe a colony centuries ago, or maybe your people weren't the first to live here. The sisters exchanged uneasy glances. Their world's legends always said they were the original children of frost. But what if that wasn't true? Ethan powered up a small drone. The moment it scanned the machines, the ground trembled. Ice cracked overhead, Mira gasped. What's happening? Back. Ethan shouted, pulling them toward the exit. But before they reached the tunnel, a low hum filled the air. The ancient machines began to glow brighter. The ice around them shimmered like living glass. A voice, calm, mechanical, and human, echoed through the chamber. Cryostasis field integrity. 37%. Human preservation module reactivating. Ethan froze. Preservation module? Lyra's voice trembled. Ethan, what is it saying? He stepped closer to the ice wall. Behind the transparent layer, something moved. A human body, perfectly preserved, floating in frozen light. Mira gasped. It's one of you. Ethan stared, breath caught. The body inside wore an ancient Earth uniform, long outdated by centuries. Across the chest plate was a faded emblem. United Earth Exploration Fleet. This man has been here for at least 500 years, Ethan murmured. Lyra looked at the frozen figure. Why was he here? Did he die here? Ethan shook his head. No. Cryostasis means he's sleeping, frozen alive to survive long journeys or experiments. The machine's voice continued. Power levels critical. Manual override required. Ethan's mind raced. If I can restart this system, maybe he can be revived. Lyra's eyes softened. You would save even him? A stranger from centuries ago? Ethan looked at her. Every life matters, human or not. She said nothing, but her heart tightened. The way he spoke, fearless, kind, was unlike any leader or priest she had ever known. He connected his power pack to the ancient panel. Sparks flew, lights flickered to life. The ice around the pod began to melt slowly, releasing thick mist into the air, but then another sound echoed behind them, deep, metallic, and angry. Lyra turned sharply. Ethan! From the tunnel they had entered, a drone ship hovered, one of the Illyrian patrol scouts. Red lights blinked on its surface. They found us, Mira whispered in terror. The drone scanned the area, its sensors glowing crimson. A cold robotic voice spoke. Unclean detected. Purge protocol initiated. Ethan cursed under his breath. Back behind the ice. He grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her and her sisters behind the cryo chamber. The drone fired, beams of blue plasma cutting through the cave walls. Shards of ice exploded, scattering like glass rain. Ethan fired back with his plasma pistol, each shot echoing loudly through the cavern. The drone's armor cracked but didn't fall. Lyra clutched her sister's hand. We can't win. They'll call more. Not if I shut them up first, Ethan growled, rolling out from cover. He fired again, striking the drone's engine. Sparks burst. The machine spun out of control, smashing into the ice wall and exploding in a shower of flame and frost. The blast shook the whole chamber. Cracks ran up the frozen walls, straight toward the cryopod. Ethan! Lyra shouted. He turned just in time to see the ice shatter completely. The frozen man inside dropped to the floor with a heavy thud encased in mist. The machines beeped wildly as power surged and died. Ethan knelt beside the body. He's still breathing. Barely. Lyra looked at him in disbelief. He's alive? Yeah, Ethan said. But he's going to need warmth now. They dragged the frozen man toward the ship. Every second felt endless. The temperature around them was falling again. The explosion had disturbed the storm above. By the time they reached the craft, wind screamed down the canyon. Ethan sealed the hatch and activated the heaters. For hours they waited. The cryo survivor, a man with dark hair and scars across his face, began to stir. His eyes opened slowly, confused and wild. Where am I? He whispered, voice dry like dust. Ethan helped him sit up. You're safe. You've been asleep for a very long time. The man's gaze darted around. You're human. But this place... He looked at Lyra and her sisters, confusion turning to shock. They're... Illyrians. Lyra tensed. You know our kind? The man nodded weakly. We created your kind. The silence that followed felt heavier than the storm outside. Ethan stared at him, stunned. What did you say? The man coughed, struggling for breath. Project Genesis. It was our mission. We were trying to build life. A new species that could survive this frozen planet. The Illyrians were never meant to turn against us. Lyra's heart pounded. You created us? The man's eyes met hers. I'm full of regret. Yes, and I'm sorry for what they became. Outside, thunder rolled. The storm had returned, but inside a bigger storm had begun, one of truth, fear, and destiny. Lyra stepped back, trembling. The words echoed in her mind. We created your kind. All her life she had been told the infertile were cursed. But what if the curse was man-made? What if the gods her people worshipped were just the ghosts of humans who once ruled this world? Ethan looked between the man and the sisters. He knew everything had changed. Saving them wasn't just an act of mercy anymore. It was the start of uncovering a buried history. He turned to Lyra. Your people need to know the truth. Lyra whispered. They will kill us for speaking it. Ethan's eyes hardened. Then we make them listen. Outside, lightning flashed across the frozen cliffs. The storm raged again, but this time it felt different, like the planet itself was waking up after centuries of silence. Lyra looked out through the window, her reflection faint in the glass. Maybe this world buried more than just us, she said softly. Ethan nodded. Then we dig it up, together. The ship trembled as the winds howled louder, wrapping the night in cold fury. But inside, 3 alien sisters and 2 humans sat in the flickering warmth of defiance, the beginning of something far greater than any of them could imagine. The wind outside screamed like a wounded beast, slamming against the ship's hull. Inside, the air was heavy with shock and silence. The man they had just awakened, the human from centuries past, sat weakly near the heater, his breath forming thin mist in the cold air. Ethan watched him closely. Lyra and her sister stayed near the corner, whispering among themselves, their silver eyes filled with both fear and curiosity. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Start from the beginning," he said quietly. "What did you mean, you created them?" The man looked up slowly, his voice rough and tired. "My name is Dr. Marcus Reed. I was part of the United Earth Exploration Fleet. Our mission was to build a colony on Virelia, a world rich in frozen water and energy crystals. But life here was impossible for normal humans. So we created one." He looked at Lyra. You're kind." Mira gasped softly, her hand gripping Lyra's sleeve. "We were made?" Marcus nodded. "The Illyrians were born from our genetic code, designed to survive extreme cold, low oxygen, and high radiation. You were our legacy. The perfect beings for this planet." Lyra's voice trembled. "Then why did you abandon us?" Marcus closed his eyes, pain flickering across his face. "Because the project failed. Something went wrong. The first generation started to reject human DNA. Your bodies evolved faster than we expected. The fertility problem began. No one could reproduce naturally." Ethan frowned. "So the infertility wasn't a curse, and it was science gone wrong." "Yes," Marcus whispered. "But the leaders of the colony didn't see it that way. They turned to religion, built myths to hide the truth. They called the infertile soulless, and the scientists," he paused, eyes darkening, "were executed as heretics." Lyra's chest rose and fell in disbelief. "So the priests who buried us, they were killing your own creation?" Marcus nodded slowly. "They believed it would please the gods. But there were no gods and only our mistakes." The words hit the sisters like cold fire. Everything they had believed since birth, the rituals, the laws, the shame, all built on lies. Ethan clenched his jaw. If this gets out, the whole system could fall apart. Marcus looked at him with tired eyes. "Which is exactly why they'll try to silence you. The High Order controls every mind on this planet through fear. They'll erase anyone who questions their version of history." Lyra's voice hardened. "Then we'll show them the truth." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's the spirit." But before they could plan further, a sharp alarm cut through the room. The radar flashed red again, multiple signals closing in fast. "Here we go again," Ethan muttered. "They tracked the energy burst from when we thawed you out." Marcus staggered to his feet. "You can't fight them head on. Their drones are everywhere. But there's something nearby that might help. The original Genesis facility." Lyra turned to him. "Genesis? The place we were made?" Marcus nodded. "It's buried beneath the western ridge, still powered by old reactors. If we can reach it, we might find data that proves everything, enough to destroy the lies forever." Ethan grabbed his coat. "Then that's our destination. Everyone strap in." The ship lifted off just as plasma fire rained down from the clouds. Blue streaks sliced through the sky like lightning. Ethan swerved hard, dodging each blast. The sisters screamed as the ship shook violently. "Hold tight," Ethan shouted. "We're not dying in a snowstorm twice." The engines roared, pushing through the thick clouds. 2 enemy fighters followed close behind, sleek Illyrian crafts painted with sacred symbols. Marcus struggled to keep his balance. "We can't outrun them for long." Ethan smirked. "Who said anything about running?" He flicked a switch. The ship dropped sharply, diving straight toward the icy canyons below. The fighters followed, firing. Plasma bolts exploded around them, melting snow into glowing steam. Lyra grabbed the seat rail, her heart racing. "You'll crash us all!" Ethan grinned. "Not if I aim right." At the last second he pulled up. The ship skimmed inches above the frozen surface, and one of the enemy crafts slammed into the canyon wall, erupting in blue fire. "Scratch one," Ethan yelled. The second fighter was smarter. It stayed back, firing missiles that trailed glowing blue tails. Mira screamed, "Behind us!" Ethan twisted the controls. "Marcus! Can this ship still drop flares?" Marcus checked the panel. "Manual system only." "Then do it." He slammed the lever. A burst of glowing metal shards shot from the ship's rear, confusing the missiles. One exploded midair, the other veered off and vanished into the snow. Ethan exhaled. That should slow them down. But as they cleared the ridge, they saw it, a massive crater covered in ice and snow, with the remains of an ancient base half buried below. Towering spires of metal stuck out like bones of a dead giant, Marcus pointed. There, that's the Genesis facility. Ethan landed the ship behind a ridge, powering down the engines to hide their heat signature. As they stepped out, the cold hit them like knives again. The wind howled through broken towers. The facility's main gate stood sealed by centuries of ice. Ethan wiped frost from a control panel. Still operational? Marcus connected his wrist link. If the core's still active, I can open it. Lyra looked up at the towering structure, the place where her kind was born and where their suffering began. Her heart thumped painfully in her chest. The panel beeped. The gate groaned, splitting open with a sound like thunder. Warm mist poured out. Inside, the lights flickered weakly, illuminating long corridors lined with glass chambers. Each chamber held the same, Illyrian embryos frozen in clear liquid, never born. Mira gasped. They were making us. Marcus's face twisted with guilt. Experimenting, adjusting DNA, trying to fix the infertility problem. We didn't know the side effects then. Ethan looked around. Looks like they gave up halfway. No, Marcus said quietly. They didn't give up. They hid the truth. As they moved deeper into the facility, they reached the central chamber, a giant sphere of metal and glass. In the center floated a massive core pulsing with pale blue light. Marcus approached a console and brushed away the frost. The screen flickered, showing symbols and logs written in both human and Illyrian script. Lyra leaned closer. Can you read it? He nodded. These are experiment records. Look. Subject generations, genome failures, fertility cycles. Then he froze. This one, and on it says Experiment Series 47 Restoration. Ethan stepped beside him. What's that mean? Marcus's voice dropped. Series 47? It was meant to correct the infertility defect. It actually worked, but the council shut it down before they could deploy it. Lyra's heart skipped. You mean, they already had the cure? Marcus nodded grimly. Yes, they destroyed it to maintain control. A fertile population would question their authority, so they buried it. And you, under snow. Lyra's hand shook. All those lives, all the children they left to die. Mira began to cry softly. We were never cursed. We were betrayed. Ethan's eyes hardened. Then it's time someone paid for it. Before they could react, the floor shook violently. The roof panels split open. A beam of light poured in from above. Ethan shouted, Incoming! Through the breach descended an Illyrian strike force. Armored soldiers with glowing spears, their eyes cold and merciless. One of them pointed. The Baron and the human abomination. By the order of the High Priest, they must be purified. Ethan pulled his pistol. You'll have to purify my boot first. Blasts filled the chamber. Plasma bolts struck walls, shattering glass pods. Sparks flew. The sisters ducked behind the control console. Marcus typed rapidly, trying to download the data. I need 30 seconds. Buy him time, Ethan yelled, firing again. 2 soldiers went down, but more poured in. Lyra saw one soldier aiming at Ethan from behind. Without thinking, she leapt forward, slamming into the attacker. His spear sliced across her arm, but she didn't stop. She grabbed the weapon and drove it into his armor, eyes blazing. Ethan turned, shocked. Lyra! She looked at him, blood freezing against her skin. I'm fine. More troops surrounded them. One aimed at Marcus. A plasma bolt fired again, but Mira jumped in the way, the blast hitting her shoulder. She fell with a cry. Mira! Lyra screamed, rushing to her. Ethan covered them, firing wildly. We're surrounded. Then Marcus shouted, Got it. He slammed the final key. The core behind him surged with light. What did you do? Ethan yelled. Marcus turned with a grim smile. Release the truth. From the core, a massive pulse burst outward. Data waves spreading through every satellite, every comlink on the planet. Ancient files, experiment logs, and hidden records streamed across the Illyrian network. Every citizen, every priest, every leader, all of them saw the truth at once. The soldiers stopped mid-battle, staring at their own wrist screens as the forbidden data appeared. Their faith shattered, their gods unexposed. Lyra held her wounded sister close, whispering through tears. They know now. Everyone knows. Outside, the sky lit up with auroras as if the planet itself was reacting to the awakening of its past. Marcus fell to his knees, exhausted. It's done. They can't bury the truth again. Ethan helped him up. Then let's get out before they remember we're still here. Lyra looked around at the chaos, the fallen soldiers, the shattered glass, the glowing core. For the first time, she didn't feel like a curse. She felt like a survivor. As they ran toward the exit, the facility began to collapse, the ancient machines overloading with power. Ethan led the way through falling debris. When they reached the surface, the night sky burned with streaks of blue light. The data storm visibly